And Mondays at this time, we are happy to have in studio the Sheriff of Mason County, Casey Salisbury. And Casey has brought in another special guest with him today. Good morning, sirs. How are you both?
Morning.
Casey, who do you got with you here?
I have Deputy Duaine Dugan. He is our Marine Patrol Enforcement Officer.
Good morning, sir. How you doing?
Pretty good.
So Marine enforcement, we're talking boating safety.
Yes.
Today's the first day of summer. Probably a lot of folks going to be heading out on the waters.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll see.
We'll see. And some proposed changes may be coming to our parts, too?
Yes.
What are we looking
Above
at?
70 degrees brings a lot of people out in Mason County.
It sure does.
I brought Duaine in today because there's been some issues with some new types of vessels being on the water in the last year or so that have created some type of difficulties for people on the water and people on the shoreline. And so it has to do with the wakeboarding, is that correct?
Wakeboards, yes.
Wakeboards, and we've made some proposals for county ordinances that the commission will be going out to the general public to have discussions with before they're changed. So that's what the offsets from the beach, the distances out in the water are important.
Okay. What types of is this open water, or is this just like Mason Lake, or what are the lakes around here where people can do this even?
It'll be mostly the lakes that the new ordinance is going to affect. What we've done is the last time the ordinance had been looked at was in 1988. So we went back in and we tried to update it to current state law and make it easier to be enforceable. Probably 60% of our boaters are out-of-county boaters. So when they come on from Thurston or even King County to us, and we try to enforce a local ordinance, they're like, well, we don't know.
Yeah.
We're not from here. So we're trying to make it more in line with state law so they can't say we didn't know. So it matches up. So we updated the ordinance to meet state law. And as the sheriff was saying, we've had a lot of complaints about wakeboards to other boats and to the shoreline erosion, damage to the docks along the shore. So one of the biggest things we did was we moved the no wake zone out to 200 feet instead of 150 feet from shore. Or at least that's the proposed movement at this time.
I'm also thinking, since 1988, the technology that these boats and the power that they output has probably changed a little bit too.
Yes, I was just talking outside a minute ago with Duaine, and in the 1990s, I was a boating safety officer in the state parks. The vessels have changed so much since then, and the capabilities of different types of boats that are out there, and I think these wakeboards are probably one of the biggest changes in the last few years. They actually, with the way they're set up, they produce quite a wake for people. Almost you're surfing off the back of them, but that wake produces problems for the really small craft, your kayaks and canoes and things, and it also disturbs some people's docks and things on the shoreline, and that's where many of our complaints are coming in.
Have you seen a lot of these types of vehicles or crafts owned by Mason County residents?
There's a few. The people on Mason Lake, there's a few. Phillips and Spencer. Spencer not so much, but Phillips, yes.
Okay. But it's a lot of people coming in on the weekends.
It's people coming in because Thurston County and part of Pierce County, some of their lakes, there's no wake boats allowed.
Okay.
They've passed local ordinances preventing those type of vessels. So we don't prevent it, and we have two rather large lakes, so we get the business.
If, as you said, you were trying to enforce a local law that somebody would say, well, you know, I'm not from here, I don't know. How do you make sure that if you give them a ticket or something, there's a recourse, like you see it to the end? Is that, how do you make sure that you gave somebody a ticket from King County that they're going to go through and pay their fines or whatnot? Casey, is there something you can do or no?
Are you saying they're just the citations are issued into our court? Yeah. And then they have notices of times to appear. Okay. Just like anywhere else. If you get written a ticket in the county, it'd be the same thing. It would be into our courts.
Okay. What are some other things that we can think about with this? And are you making recommendations to the county on these changes?
Yes, and I always think that's important because oftentimes people think that whatever the rule or law is, that the sheriff decides these things. The sheriff does not decide these things. The ordinances like that are we give some guidance and help to the commission because, of course, we hear a lot about it when people like Duaine and the Marine Patrol officer are out on the water. Yeah, these are only recommendations, and the county will have some public hearings, and then they reach a decision on what ordinances they want to accept or change and what ordinances they don't.
And how many folks do you have working on the waters?
We currently have 10 qualified boating operators, and then we also have 5 what we call deckhands. The deckhands are deputies that have been trained in boating stuff. They use them as second set of eyes, a cover officer for those kind of situations, another set of hands. They're not allowed to operate the boat as such because they haven't attended the boating school through state parks, which is now currently 44 hours.
But you don't have 10 people out on the water, right? Like all the time.
Thank you.
No.
That is the biggest point that we try to get across to people because many times it gets out there that the sheriff has 10 boating officers. Please remember that just like Duaine, these are all deputies that are working regular shifts. We do not have just people out there full time. And so people like Duaine will work their regular shifts and put in extra time on the water. These are not additional deputies. These are not full-time boating deputies. These are regular deputy sheriffs that give their extra time to go out there. And I think, and I keep bringing this up, I think one of the things I'm most proud of for the Marine Patrol officers is a couple of years ago, as we have part-time or people that are doing additional work out there on their own hours, they were the top boating Marine Patrol in the state of Washington. Was it 2 years ago?
2 years ago.
Wow.
And with one of the agencies to be able to do that without having full-time boating officers, the people that are out there working that, we're top in the state in Mason County. We get recognized for that. So that was all people that are doing their regular job and then taking on additional hours, and that's really important for us to remember.
So do you also have to wait for the citizen to report to you so you can also know what's going on out there if you don't have an officer out there all the time? I mean, you have to rely on the citizens to say, hey, there's something going on, to call into you.
Yeah, we get calls just like you would for any other call. Somebody will call. Duaine can probably talk about the scheduling, how we're looking at setting up a schedule for boating, and we try to look at the trends and those kind of things.
Yeah, we respond to whatever the big emphasis is, but we still, if you look at it, Mason County has more shoreline to patrol than any other county in the state. Between the Hood Canal, Puget Sound, and we have currently 12 lakes that we patrol. There's other lakes we could go onto, but there's 12 main lakes. So we have a lot of shoreline. We've got 3 boats to try to spread out through all that water and different, I work patrol. I'm a traffic collision reconstructionist. I'm an FTO, which is a field training officer. I have lots of duties plus the boating duties. So yeah, we need the citizens to say, at 10 o'clock at night, this boat's out there every night running up and down and loud stereo systems or whatever it is, so we know where we can start trying to focus or move manpower as needed to cover that. Otherwise, we just try to equally share our time as much as possible on the waters that are in this county.
So you guys mainly do the lakes and the canal and the sound, but do you have to rely on the state, like Fish and Wildlife or somebody out on those waters also?
Fish and Wildlife helps us a lot on the Hood Canal and the Puget Sound. We share it, of course, with Thurston and the other counties, so they've got patrol boats out there. For search and rescue, it's all hands on deck, as they say. We put everybody out there, and the Coast Guard calls us. That's one of the things. We get called all the time with the Coast Guard to check abandoned boats or boats adrift to see if it's actually search and rescue or just a boat that broke loose. The nearest Coast Guard boat unit, is in Seattle. So for them to get to the canal, they've got quite a run. Otherwise, they launch a chopper, and they don't want to launch a chopper if it's just a boat adrift.
These are great things that are coming up because, again, the public oftentimes thinks, well, the Coast Guard's there. Well, it's interesting that the Coast Guard's calling us. We're not calling the
Yeah.
Coast Guard. And so, again, it's a lot of staff, a lot of area to cover with very little staff on those peak hours to get out there. And the other one that is complicating, to some people, unless you actually look at a map of our waterways, is that there are three very distinct bodies of water that are separated. You know, when you go to the open water or into the canal compared to a lake, that's why we have three boats, because they're distinctly different bodies of water. You can't get there from here unless those boats are in the separate bodies of water. And some people have this thought process, if you're not looking at a map, that they're all connected. You can just go from one to the next. And if Duaine is at Lake Cushman and gets called to Spencer Lake, you know, he's got to trailer that vessel down, put it back in the water, and just think of the distance in time just to get from one to the other. By the time somebody's gone by on their jet ski or something like that, it's a long haul for us. So it does take a while to get there. So please be patient when you call. We might be a long ways away on another body of water, and we've got to trailer that boat.
What would be the best notes to use as a descriptor for a boat that is doing something illegal? So instead of saying, oh, it was a long boat that had good speakers.
Color,
Okay.
number of people on board,
Okay.
good identification of who's operating the boat, because we get out there and there's 8 people on the boat and they're all pointing fingers at each other saying, oh, no, he was doing it. No, he was doing it. No, I wasn't doing it. And the most important is the WN number on the bow. It's like a license plate number.
Should those should be visible?
They have to be visible by state law. It's a $257 fine from the state if they're not readily visible and meet the requirements, which is a 3-inch block letter on the forward third of the bow.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I think the other thing, just real quickly, because I talked about this a couple of weeks ago as we were coming into this time of year, that I guess it concerns me the most, because a number of years ago I was on a rescue dive team, and is just the idea, and Duaine works on this in an education enforcement year-round, is the idea of life jackets on the vessels and around, especially around kids on the water or near the water. You want to talk about that, Duaine? What you're
Yeah, currently state parks, which is the liaison between the Coast Guard and all law enforcement agencies in the state, has 4 things that they want to be non-negotiable. Life jackets is the very top of the line, followed by boating under the influence, rules of the road, navigational rules, and then the mandatory boater's education card. We've lost numerous people in the county alone over the years that I've done this, just because of life jackets. People forget that Mason County water, doesn't matter where you are, is considered cold water and a hypothermia risk. Any water below 70 degrees is considered cold water.
Wow.
So
Wow.
it's a big issue, and with life jackets on, that increases your survival time in the water from 30 minutes to up to 2 hours, just because of the life jacket. And as the sheriff was saying, it might take us a time to get there with resources if we have to hook it up to a trailer, get it there, put it back in the water, etc. So life jackets are the biggest thing. We've lost people because of this. So that's the number one push. Next one, of course, is boating under the influence. The last weekend of this month is Operation Drywater, which is the national boating under the influence emphasis. So there will be units from all over every state out pushing a big emphasis on boating under the influence. So that's a big thing at the end of the month.
Okay. We'll remember to let folks know about that. We're coming up on ABC News, and we have Mason County Sheriff Casey Salisbury as well as Duaine Dugan on talking about boater safety. And remember that coming down the next couple of weeks, perhaps your opportunity to publicly input on some changes around the lakes regarding the types of boats that are being used. That's all going to be in front of the County Commission. Thank you much, guys, for coming in this morning.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good to see you. 7:59 at I-Fiber1 News Radio.
ABC Entertainment News. Here's Jason Nathanson.
Tragic news from Hollywood. Anton Yelchin played Chekhov in the current big screen version of Star Trek.
May I have your attention, please?
The 27-year-old actor died in a freak car accident at his house in Los Angeles. Police think his car somehow ran down his steep driveway and pinned him against his brick mailbox. They're investigating to figure out exactly what happened. He has 4 movies scheduled for release in the next year.